All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Enough to Keep Going here on the E2KG Network. Ladies and gentlemen, we have done it. We have hit 150 episodes. Okay, we actually hit 150 episodes like a long time ago. Well, not that long ago, but in true old man fashion, we are lying about our age. We have had multiple restarts and name changes. But yes, this is officially our 150th episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. The gentlemen before me here tonight have been podcasting with me beyond 150 episodes, and they still keep coming back to talk to each other, to pretend like we like each other. But truth be told, I am so thankful to have their friendship and their camaraderie. So, joining me here tonight, Swissguard, welcome back. It is so good to see you and hopefully to hear from you.
Yes, thank you. I hope I'll be coherent tonight. I had to get up at 5:30 a.m. with my boss and do some pre-dawn software maintenance. So, yeah, I'm kind of running on fumes right now, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, if you don't make any sense, I'm sure it'll make good podcasting. So we'll get a good laugh out of it along the way. But Edo also joining us tonight is all four of the crew. Osiris Prime, how are you, sir?
You're well. And before I forget, if you can see my shirt here, thank you, guys, please. I forgot to mention that last week for these fine shirts that you have given us.
Yes, thank you very much to celebrate our network, our friendship, or at least our podcast hosting sharing abilities. So, but I did notice, Agasicles, that you sent me a white shirt. And so I almost thought about wearing it for the podcast just to screw up your balance levels. But so thank you for the shirts. Thank you for manning the wheels of steel over there. But how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm good, and you guys can feel welcome to wear the shirts on the show. I would appreciate it. I mean, I would like it. I mean, I would enjoy it. You don't have to, but I mean, you don't have to worry about screwing up the color palette. I give you guys crap most of the time when I claim that you're screwing up my color palette.
In typical fashion, my wife claimed the shirts, and I haven't been able to even wear them yet. So,
and you guys are the talent, so it's the least that the network can do is to get you guys t-shirts. So no worries at all.
And so, yes, here on the E2KG network, we are coming at you every week with at least a podcast, maybe two, maybe, depends on how we're feeling. But really, without an E3, our podcast schedule for the summer has been, well, we thought it was going to be slow, but there's been plenty to talk about. But every other week, we come with our deep dive, our news episodes, our news and analysis episodes. Last week, it was a great news episode. Next week, we'll be back with another one in terms of a deep dive with Osiris Prime and Swisscar. But tonight, gentlemen, to celebrate our 150th, we are in a game experience show. We are in a what have we been playing? What has kept us busy, kept us engaged, kept us playing for the last week or two? But in true E2KG fashion, we also, well, we're not just playing what we want or what we think we should try, but we also give each other some assignments. In true dad fashion, we make sure that we have projects to do and homework to check in on. And so tonight, actually 2 weeks ago, our assignment was space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the E2KG network. So we came just out of EA Play a few weeks ago with the reveal of Star Wars Squadrons, and with that idea, we wanted to dive back into some space games. So we all have. This must be a very special episode, gentlemen, because we all have finished our assignment. I'll say that I did kind of the Cliff Notes version of it because I just fired back up Star Wars Battlefront, the VR missions. So this was a 2016 20-minute VR mission that came out from Criterion, and it's still a whole lot of fun. It's 20 minutes. It feels like I should be sitting in a mall somewhere and I've paid $10 to sit in this smelly seat. But, maybe that's just my 90s mall talking. So, but it is a lot of fun. And what it has done is got me excited again for the potential of Star Wars Squadron. So I know that the normal fighter missions and the mode within Battlefront 2 was made by Motive, and that was, or at least Motive and Criterion. So the idea here is that there's a good pedigree, and I'm looking forward to what it brings. But the rest of you gentlemen did not uh, dive into any Star Wars or even Star Trek. I want to make sure that obviously I know that my intro was Star Trek, but that may not be what has caused us to dive back into our worlds off to the first star on the right, second star on the left. Anyhow, so Swiss, welcome back. And since you have been not able to join us for a little while, we are so glad to have you. And I want you to go first. What have you been playing?
So, I didn't take my inspiration from Star Wars. I took my inspiration from SpaceX. And I used this as an excuse to play Surviving Mars, published by Paradox. And I don't remember how long ago it was, but at some point Epic had that game free to claim. So I threw it in my library, hadn't touched it, and then when our homework assignment came out, it was a fantastic opportunity. So this is a city building game, but you're building cities on Mars. I played through the tutorial and then I started my own colony, and it's definitely like a chill game so far. I guess I haven't gotten it enough where I'm like stressed out or anything, but I'm enjoying it. Like the graphics and everything, you know, they're fine. Nothing super spectacular, but you know, you're up high. If you zoom in, you can kind of see your little drone robots doing things, but I appreciated the balance of quote unquote realism and still being like a building game. I didn't feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of options there, but the tutorial did a good job of kind of jumping you from phase to phase in the game and kind of introducing okay, when you first start, this is what you need to worry about. And then it fast forwards you, okay, now that you have that, we need to worry about getting some habitable domes. Okay, now we got the habitable domes, you need to worry about how you get your settlers and whatnot. So they jumped you through. So I felt pretty comfortable when I started my own campaign. I didn't feel there's a little bit of experimentation that I had with like aligning my city, because in the tutorial you don't really force to do that, which you are as much as you are when you're starting from scratch. But all in all, I appreciate it. Like, all your stuff has to be powered, and so you have to actually build out your electrical grid. So like old school SimCity railroads or streets, you know, you have power cables, and then or pipes, which will get you oxygen or water. And you know, a dome is going to have access to electricity and oxygen and water. So it's been pretty nifty. I kind of appreciated you can customize what kind of settlers you have. So when you start, you actually choose what who's the sponsor is. So for example, the United States is fairly wealthy, so it's a little bit of an easier setting because you can basically order more supplies from Earth, and you can scale it up to a different, you know, entity that will, you know, it's pretty Spartan. You can customize what kind of settlers you have. So they even have little categories for gamers. You can prioritize gamers to be part of your settlers, and they give bonuses. So like
Wait
religion.
So
yeah.
What I was just because what
I was gonna
bonus
say,
does a gamer provide?
Religion will provide. Your settlers won't commit suicide if they go in, like, if they lose sanity or are super depressed. Gamers help with increase the settlers' sanity. So if you're into gaming, it helps with your sanity levels. So I decided to have a bunch of religious gamers. That's gonna be. I'm an inventor sponsoring a bunch of religious gamers trying to colonize Mars. So we'll see how that goes. So far, so good. I got a chuckle out of that. But I just like the presentation. It's not super it's like, it's a sim, but they did it's solid. It's a solid sim if you're looking for that experience. And I always say, yeah, I think I'll keep playing this one, and I think this is actually a homework assignment that I will keep playing on. So it's not just me saying that and never touching Phantom Doctrine again or whatever. So
Yeah, this definitely sounds like it's in your wheelhouse in terms of genre and style, and so that's interesting. I mean, I do remember it being free on Epic, so I'm glad that somebody here had a chance to dive into it a little bit further.
So, have you played other games in this genre, and do you have any sense of like how this compares to like Kerbal Space Program or Stellaris, actually, which is also another game
Yeah,
published by
Stellaris
Paradox?
feels more like a apt comparison as a Paradox game and a 4X
actually,
game.
like my comparisons are like SimCity, or like a month or two ago I played Banished, which was the indie studio that did more of like a medieval 17th century city builder type thing, where you had to kind of just keep your settlers alive and make sure they had their stuff. But I like I can tell that this game was developed by a larger team than Banished, for example, because that was a one-man thing. For a one-man game, I thought it was fantastic, and I enjoyed my time with it. But this just feels a little bit more polished, and I like the setting. But no, I haven't. No, I haven't played Kerbal Space Program yet.
Did you talk at all, or can you talk a little bit about like the financial model?
So basically, you start off with a chunk of money that your sponsor gets, and there's some like text that you can research, which a little bit of Civ thrown in there, that will maybe give you some boost to your funds. But I haven't played at a difficulty level where that's been an issue yet. So what will happen is you get one initial rocket, spaceship or whatever to land, and you can choose what kind of resources you want. So there's going to be some prefabricated materials you have, and then you kind of have to produce everything on the planet. There are some more advanced materials for more advanced structures. For example, electronic components or polymers that you may not really be able to bring a lot with you on your first rocket, so you can order or request a subsequent shipment. You only get 2 shipments, I think. So one's going to be like materials, and one is going to have to be your first colonist. But and the subsequent shipment, I can be like, okay, I really need another drone hub. That's going to cost me $200 million, right? Out of my $4 billion budget. I want some more electronic components, and you can purchase however many. So basically, you fill up the rocket by buying items with your budget. So there are ways, I think, where you can actually start producing tech that is of interest on Earth, and I think you can increase your budget a little bit or something. But I haven't gotten far enough into it yet to even have to worry about that. So
Okay, so it's not you. It's there, but you haven't yet hit the point where like you are
I'm playing at a difficulty level where it's not a problem.
right,
I'm
right,
sure
right.
that if you chose to do if I chose to start like on like a hard mode, where with a more limited budget, it could be an issue. I also started. It lets you pick where you want to land on the planet, and they have spots that are already like highly rated. So I chose an existing spot. So I had access to some metals and water. You can like basically mine the water and whatnot. But if I wanted to, I could have chosen a more remote site on the planet that would have been more difficult, maybe. So I haven't had any problem generating the materials I need so far.
But you can see a point where you would be able to create like a money making rocket. So you would be able to stuff the rocket full with things that would create a capital flow to improve your economy, or I mean, at some point, you can see where you would hit a difficulty level if you were playing at a higher difficulty level, where you would be required to generate your own capital.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right now I can pretty much order what I want, and it's not a problem.
Okay.
But there's a point at which like I might need to either not so much capital per se. I
Make
think
money.
it's more focused on. I think the focus is definitely on acquiring resources
Okay.
rather than the money. But
Gotcha.
that's like a side thing that you can do to, I guess, help your colony if you want to be able to tap into Earth.
Okay.
Are the maps procedurally generated? Do you know, or I mean, have you played it enough to see
From
that
what
you're
I
getting
can
different
tell,
landscapes?
they tried to, you know, I don't know Martian geography. Okay, I'm not like a, so
But
I'm
it's
not a
modeled. It
Martian.
appears to be
I'm
modeled
not a
after.
Martian cartographer. However, when I do the initial thing, it looked like they took the equivalent of the Google Earth of the planet and at least started with that. So the big features are there, and then I don't know if when you zoom in onto an area for that feature, if it's kind of somewhat procedurally generated, but you know, it was the idea was there that you are going to Mars in our solar system.
Yeah, between the technology, the map, even the economics, it feels like it's very grounded in.
Yeah.
Or at
Once
least
you
it attempts to be
land,
grounded.
once you land, there's like basically a grid. So I don't think you can expand, across the face of the planet. I don't quite know how many cells there are, but you actually have to have satellites or something scan the sectors to find out if there's materials or whatever, and you kind of can build out from your initial sector to others, but I think they definitely pieced it together. Like it's, I think, individual areas that might correspond to the planet.
Cool. Great. Thanks for diving in and sharing your exploration. So let's go from something grounded in the real world and some scientific fact to Osiris. You have been playing something that is kind of an alternative history and much more fantastical in its interpretation of the outer space.
Yes, the Outer Worlds. I'm going to talk about this one first just because I just got to the point in the game where I can actually go to different planets now because I was kind of just stuck on that first planet you start at. So, and I haven't actually like traversed space, and I don't know if there's like an animation or something yet that actually shows it. But yeah, so this was the Obsidian game that came out recently. Well, recently for the Switch at least. Whereas kind of Fallout-ish, Skyrim, openish world, I guess. In this game, it's not as big as say a Skyrim or a Fallout. You kind of go, from what I can tell, since I just got to the planets. You go to each planet, and they're kind of just a kind of a biggish area that you can play in. Graphically, if you're playing handheld, or if I was playing on my 1080p TV, it actually looks pretty decent. It looks pretty not too bad. If I threw it on this 4K monitor here that I'm using, it looks rough, like really rough.
Can we go back to the planet scale? But so, Are you saying there's like a cheat? And what I mean by that is there's this effort to make the game seem like a very big open world by having interplanetary travel. But the reality is much as is the case with Destiny 2. Once you get to the planet, there's actually not that much to it. It's just like 2 or 3 encampment areas. Or is it bigger than that?
I'll jump in
DB
first.
might be able to because I've only been on the first planet so far.
Yeah, I think it doesn't pretend to say that it's an open world or a planet exploration game. That you are loading into maps and zones. Those are. It's in that kind of Fallout 3. Even Fallout 3, you got a bigger, wider area. This is very much it's a self-contained area. You're going to end up with artificial walls and caves or buildings that are designed to kind of gate you in. So it doesn't hide that fact because there's plenty of loading screens to remind you of it.
Yeah, because even in that first world I was in, there was like a building kind of off in a distance, and I was like, oh, I probably can go to that. Like, nope, because there's like this sheer cliff that it kind of it's the building's on the end of it, so you can't climb up it. I tried, so not like in Skyrim where you can kind of climb everything and anything, even maybe if you weren't supposed to. But I was trying for like 10, 15 minutes or so, and I couldn't get up it. So I was like, I guess that's just for show because I couldn't get to it. So
So, I mean, how do we feel about that? Like, I mean, because that's kind of been starkly standing out to me with regards to Destiny. You know, in this ongoing discussion of like they're gonna retire. You know, they're gonna put some worlds in the vault, right, and then open some ones back up. But I'm like, well, but at the end of the day, there's like 9 planets you can be on, and they're all like the size of like 3 camps. And like at a certain point, I'm kind of like, but the allure of Destiny 2 is that theoretically, like Guardians should escape the solar system, right? There should be enough to explore, and you know, and you know, you know, we're gonna talk about No Man's Sky in a little bit, and you know, you and I have both been playing that, and so I kind of wonder about. And as you were talking, I was thinking a lot about because Star Citizen is another game that I played, but which harkens very much back to Freelancer, right? And the joke with Freelancer, right? The cheat with Freelancer was you would go to all these different planets, but at the end of the day, you would walk into a bar on each planet. So it was like the same setting with like 5 or 6 people for you to talk to, and then you would get in your ship and you would go. So like something about that doesn't feel right or equal, or like it means that it should be judged as less than some of these games that have true open worlds.
I would say it doesn't sound modern. I mean, every time I hit stuff like that, it's always when I'm playing like a PS2 or a PS3 remake or generation game, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's what it was like. And I didn't notice it back then, and it's just because of what we're used to now that I'm noticing it. It was who made the Outer Worlds again? Was this like a AAA studio?
Obsidian.
Yeah, Obsidian.
It's Obsidian,
well,
but it's
okay.
Obsidian before they were purchased by Microsoft, so
Yep.
it comes in kind of in that kind of AA aspect.
Man, I mean, it's got to be AA plus, right? Like I have to group this
That
with.
might be a discussion for another day.
Okay, all right, I'll drop that. But I'll just
As far as that part.
I have to put it in the same category as the Fallout game, right, which was big, but also Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale, all of both of which were. I don't disagree with you, but it's AAA scaling, firmly pointed at AAA. I will agree it's in a weird valley in between the two.
Yeah, right. Yes, I will say that it is pointing in that direction. It certainly came out with that type of praise when it came out in October, but it is also evident kind of the limitations and the restrictions they either gave themselves based on budget or based on time or based on staff power. But it was, whether it is, I guess I never went into it thinking it was a big giant open world. These were zones in some ways. The allure of Obsidian game is the storytelling. It's not it's not all the wandering I did between cities in New Vegas. It was the interaction with characters that Obsidian really plays to. And so, but yeah, that's my opinion on it. I didn't put it in that type of big category. And I looked at it for a narrative type of experience more than an exploration type of experience.
Yeah. And I knew that going into it. Like, I knew it wasn't going to be an open world game just because stuff I've read before. So, and I was like, I was a little disappointed when I couldn't get to that building. And then like on the other side of the big map that, that I was in, I could see some more buildings. I was like, I probably can't get to those either. So I'm not going to try, which is fine. I mean, I can go back to No Man's Sky. I can go back to Elite Dangerous or games like that, where it's like big open world, planets and a whole universe and stuff like that. So it didn't bother me too much. And I kind of like that. Like, okay, I just got a big-ish area that I can kind of explore, and it was a fairly big area. That was the first planet I went on. I don't know if they get bigger or not. DB maybe no, it's pretty much the same.
I think that's probably your bigger area.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. You definitely see those. It feels. I think Swiss hits it on the nail. Like it feels artificial. It feels kind of an older school of design?
I'm trying to think. Maybe it took me 4 or 5 hours, maybe, to get to that point where I was able to finally get to the next planet. And that's kind of fine, just because the way I'm gaming right now, it's like, okay, it's before that I was playing Hellblade, and that took me, a few months to beat, which is fine because I played it a few hours maybe during the weekend, Friday and Saturday, maybe Sunday, so it's kind of nice just to kind of have that kind of contain like story, and then I could still explore a little bit, at least, in these worlds. So it's not such a big deal for me.
So did you leave the planet with the preacher or the reverend or whoever?
No, I went with it was like that first companion you get. It's the woman. Well, for me it was a woman. She's like the engineer or something.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Havarti.
So I left with her. I didn't want to. I let the city just go without power and kick that guy to the curb. The other guy.
Oh, okay.
So
Yep. I let the city go without power, but I brought him along. So.
Oh, did you? No, I left him there. I didn't like him. I didn't like.
Yeah, it's not quite as dramatic as the bomb aspect of Megaton.
Yeah, like the nuking. Yeah.
2.
No, it's just kind of like they're probably going to die slowly, or maybe they'll go with all the people in the other camp because their power is there. So, but no.
So go back and tell me how it's running on. I've played it on PC. I've played it on Xbox. So how is it running? What's the frame rate? What are you noticing on Switch?
So before I get to that, and kind of going back to what you mentioned about the, you kind of play this game or Obsidian games because of the characters. That was, I didn't want to take that preacher with me because I didn't like him. The girl I kind of liked. She was more personable and just, I just kind of liked her more. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take her along instead. So it just kind of goes with, and there's other like kind of quirky characters within that town too, and in the other encampment that you have to go to, that you get these different personalities. So it's just kind of cool. Gameplay wise, it actually plays pretty well. I don't see a lot of, other than the graphics just being kind of ugly sometimes. Like I said, mostly on this 4K monitor. It seems to run pretty smooth. I don't have any like stuttering or like pop-in or clipping or anything like that. Any of those kind of any issues. I actually was able. I don't know. This might be just because of all the shooters I've been playing, over the this year and just the past years, but I actually had to put up the sensitivity on the game because of the aiming, which actually I really like the gunplay in this game. Fallout, I don't know, there's something always off about Fallout's shooting. I don't know if that was just I'm assuming it was just a Bethesda's thing maybe, but it seems pretty good here. I can aim pretty well and go ahead.
So just to be clear, so have you played the game undocked?
Yeah, I played it pretty much anyway, docked, undocked. Like I said, 1080p monitor or TV, 4K monitor.
And the graphics were still every once in a while not that great, even undocked.
Yeah, I mean it's even undocked. It doesn't look like spectacular or anything like that. It looks muted, like all the colors are muted, and I think like if I was to play it on the PC or maybe on the Xbox or something, which I'll have to throw it on the Xbox because I know it came up on Game Pass. Just to see how it is. I would figure it'd be more vibrant, like the colors. The colors seem kind of muted, like kind of like muddy almost.
Because I expect the Switch to look bad. I expect the Switch to look horrible on a 4K monitor. I mean,
Right.
I don't even like, except for their first party games. I'm not even super crazy about how it looks on a 10. Like I've often considered like only hooking it, not. If there are a way to avoid hooking it up to a 4K monitor or display, right, running it on a 1080p display is my preference. But like, yeah, because just the Switch in general, just I feel like looks bad on a 4K monitor. But it's very relevant and very important to hear that it still has its issues undocked, because that would be the big kicker for me of a poor performance indicator.
Yeah, and really before this game, any other game I've played on this monitor, seemed fine. I didn't have any issues with it. Well, I didn't have any issues with this one, but just the the graphics seemed fine. But yeah, this one, I definitely could tell the difference when I threw it up. And actually, I think I played it on the TV, my 1080p TV, like after I tried it on the 4K, and I was like, whoa, I could just notice it right away. I was like, holy cow, it actually looks a little bit better. So, and then undocked, if you're just playing handheld, it looks probably a little bit better than the TV, but it's still, about the same. But But I'm having a good time with it, so I definitely want to keep going with it, see how the story goes.
Nice. I guess because I agree with you. I have played my Switch on both 4K and 1080p, and I always feel like it feels a little more washed out, a little more Vaselined a little bit on a 4K. But when I bring it down to a 1080p, the colors, it definitely feels more vibrant. So, and it was Outer Worlds there's a lot of color. I mean, it's a pretty game. There's a lot of pop to it. It's not kind of a Fallout kind of washed out world. They do a lot with color and variety there. So it's interesting and but I'm glad I'm kind of surprised and glad to hear that it's running as well as it has, given some of the other news stories around it. So
yeah, like I said, I haven't seen any big issues. Now I don't know if there's like more people and or stuff that happens later on, so maybe I'll start to stutter or something. But from what I've seen so far, yeah, it's been fine.
So let's jump from something very limited and confined in the Outer Worlds to something expansive and certainly I don't even know if there is an end to No Man's Sky. So I guess, Cleese, you mentioned that you had been playing it. Prime, I know you have been playing it as well. So I'm going to turn the mic over to you, gentlemen, and let you chart our course here.
I guess because I want to hear your thoughts, because I've talked about it before. So I want to hear your thoughts on what you thought of the game or think of the game first. Maybe.
Yeah, for some reason my mic zeroed out after I took it off on me. So I mean, my feelings on the game are, oh my gosh! Like I can't believe that I spent 4 years waiting to come around to this game. It is amazing. Now that being said, we very frequently talk on this podcast how it's an unfortunate occurrence to come to a game that has been out in the wild for a lot and have heard all the hype about it, and that tends to give us a negative, we wind up walking away from it with a negative view. This is one of the instances where the fact that you guys have played this game before significantly prepared me for the torture do loop that is the front 15 minutes of the game. And so I actually found that not bothersome. So I can definitely see how if I had come to that game fresh, if I had been first to the fight on that game, I would have definitely been in the risk area bouncing off of it. But because I'd had that prep, I knew it was going to be a speed reading event, right? I knew to be prepared to have to, do some do-overs as it was. Now, the unfortunate thing is I'd also heard that, in either Next or Beyond, they started softening that a little bit, and so there would be instances where you would spawn on a planet and not necessarily be in that torture do loop. So I had my fingers crossed that was going to be my beginning, but that was not the case. I firmly landed on the planet immediately in Rad Has and having to find sodium and recharge the suit and yada yada. But again, I immediately started speed reading everything as it came up. I looked for things and tried to address all the problems that came up. I didn't feel, I guess because it was prep, I can definitely see how, again, without the prep, it would have felt like you were watching Armageddon, right? Where every 5 minutes, the plan goes wrong, right? So, but it was not that experience for me. And I was casually playing it. I was doing some local recording with Let's Play. So the part of it was a tech thing. I had broken out this old capture card that I'd had for several years that I hadn't used in a while. I was completely ready to have to do a do-over, but I didn't, and I was able to quickly see, where there was the health for the suit and there was your health. So I didn't flip out when the suit lost, was completely depleted, because I realized, okay, well, I still have all of my health, right, to have to go through before this thing is all really done. So it was pretty awesome, and I just kept. Now there was a little bit of a little mental anxiety exercise going on about okay, I know that eventually the whole point is that I leave the planet. So how many crisis events are there before I leave the planet? 5? Okay, no, one more. 6? Okay, no, one more. And I kept counting that, and then I was now it's dark, and now I got to go in the cave, and went through all of that stuff, but. At the end of the day, I was but I think if I keep pushing, I can get off the planet, before, within the first 45 minutes. And I did. So it's an amazing feeling, like that first time you step in the ship, right? Same thing as like Star Citizen, like the first time you step in the ship, when the ship is space worthy, like stepping in the ship the first time when it's not space worthy is not it's a rather anticlimactic event. But you step in the ship and it's space worthy, and you close the canopy, and you're like, oh please, like let all systems come up, right? Please be green this time. And the thing comes up, and you get off the planet, So, and again, the weird convergence and intersection was I had been playing a lot of Star Citizen, recently, so kind of the paradigms and norms and ways of looking at, okay, it's a ship. I'm trying to get off the, because it doesn't tell you. Like there's no graduated tick marks that tell you what your up angle is in comparison to the planet's surface or whatever. But again, I'd been playing Star Citizen, so I was like, all right, get the nose to 90 degrees, perpendicular to the planet's surface, and get off. So I kind of ported that norm from the one game over to the other. And that helped me get off. And then, charting the next point, entering light hyperspeed for the first time. All of it. All of those are the game looks gorgeous on an Xbox One X on a 4K TV. I was really impressed. So yeah, I haven't hit anything yet where there's a thing, and I'm like if you talk about a survival game and you talk about a design paradigm that cuts very close to something like a Red Dead Redemption 2. Just in terms of it being like that survival element of Red Dead Redemption 2, not with you can argue about whether or not the things in No Man's Sky are busy work in comparison to Red Dead Redemption 2. I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like I was repairing like a wagon on a wheel on a wagon and crap like that. But it was solid. Like there's that exploration part of it, whereas something like a Red Dead Redemption 2, like you're not finding, there's no wonder, like, okay, so it's a camp, right? It's a, right, there are things that you expect, whereas in No Man's Sky, as you run around the planet's surface, like, you never know what you're going to encounter. And that, of course, obviously has to do with that procedural generation that DBQ asked about before. I'm sorry, go ahead, Swiss.
I was just going to say, I think Red Dead also has the narrative element that, a game like No Man's Sky, that's not the point. Like, you go in with the right mentality of, I am, like you said, exploration. So having to mine rocks for 10 minutes doesn't feel like an artificial inhibitor to the next, grand story sequence.
Well, it's that thing of, and obviously I've been kind of toying around with like some philosophy and concepts of like, well, what defines what happiness you extract from a game. And we've talked about it before, but like for me, a big part of that happiness is creating the story myself, right? With Red Dead Redemption 2, you're, as much of an open world as it is, you are hardwired into that narrative, right? That there's certain points where there are certain things that you're going to trip over and certain things that you can't avoid because they're scripted, right? They're there, you're supposed to go through them. Whereas No Man's Sky, like, allows you to kind of write that fiction in your own head, right? So you can choose, what you're about, or kind of what the narrative for your character is.
Yeah, and I just got back into it, even before this PickZ PlayZ, and I actually went back to my original save from like whenever it came out on the Xbox.
2018. Yeah. The summer.
Yeah, because before that I had started a new one because I had started a little bit earlier in the year and kind of messed around because I was trying to get a hold of, get a feel of all the controls and stuff again. But this time around, it was only maybe like a month or two that I kind of took a break again. And then when I started back up, I was just like, let me just go back to my old save. And, I had a freighter or a command ship. I got like, I think six of the different kind of ships you can get now, which I'm kind of surprised that you can only store 6 ships in those freighters. It kind of seems like you'd be able to do more. But basically, I have
the bio ships, the ones that look like living organisms.
No, I haven't even gotten to that yet. So yeah, I just now finally got like one of each kind of ship because there's like a fighter, there's a shuttle, there's a freighter, or I'm sorry, a hauler, and then like an explorer ship. So I got one of each of those, just so I can have one of each. And I'm kind of looking for like the highest tier of those ships right now. I actually just saw like beginning of this week a video on how to get a lot of money or units as they call it in here. So I was kind of doing that, building my money up for the kind of the first half of the week, and then this past couple days I was starting to look for ships and kind of still doing that too, just because some of the you can buy freighters later on too, and like obviously the higher the freighter or the higher the class, it's going to be more expensive. So I'm trying to build up that money for a really nice freighter. And then even with the freighter, I mean, there's so much you can do in this game. You can do the exploration with the freighters, and you could send frigates that you can I think buy, or I forget how you get those. I think you just have to buy them. You can send them off on missions. They kind of just go off on their own, and eventually they'll come back if they make it back. And then you get however many credits and stuff like that for that stuff too. So it's kind of cool. But I started following. While I was kind of doing that, I started following the storyline, which there's kind of a story in there. Once again, so I'm kind of trying to weave my way through that, and I don't know. I kind of just get sidetracked. It's kind of like when I was playing Skyrim. You just see a little, a rock over there, and hey, I got to go check what that is. So it's a really fun game. I love it. And the one thing I really like about this game, and it wasn't the first game that I played that you could do this, is you can go in and out of a planet, and it's not a cutscene. You actually fly into it or out of the atmosphere and stuff, like Gaskely said. And it's a lot easier than when I used to play Elite Dangerous, because you had to get the certain angle, and otherwise you just fly right into the planet and explode. Here you can just go in and out, and it's just kind of cool. I always wanted that in a video game, and obviously it wasn't until recently where you actually be able to do that. So it's really cool, that kind of feeling to fly out by yourself. Although, do have to say, stupid having to power up your thrusters, because every time you fly off of a planet, even just when you're in the planet, just kind of fly off the surface, that uses up fuel. The warp cells and stuff like that, it gets kind of annoying. But now that I got all this money, I can just buy all the stuff that I need instead of having to go down and mine it for 15 20 minutes or whatever, 10 15 minutes. So it's just kind of nice that I can do that now, at least. And now I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna start with the story still, or continue with the story, and just kind of do exploration stuff. So it's kind of nice. Try to power up my suit and my the multi-tool and all these other things that you got to power up and get all this material for. So it's a lot. It gets involved if you want it to be.
Yeah, and I'm like, if you haven't played this game on Game Pass, I can't think of like a better justification. Like, you have a jetpack, and just the wonder of flying around on the jetpack, or using the jetpack to cover an ascent that you can't climb up. Whereas just like Swiss said, in so many games, you hit that ascent, the vertical is too high for you to, and you have to go around, right? Or you just assume that it's an insurmountable surface. But in this game, you just hit your jetpack and literally fly up the face of the mountain.
I'm having nightmarish PTSD from the Anthem demo right now.
No, it's a much more stable game at this point. But yeah, it really is. I mean, it is almost an unlimited type of experience, and it is so much. It is so much of a game that you can make it what you want. You can mine those minerals, you can build your base, you can go and do what Osiris is doing and collect ships. You can travel and chart stars and work between solar systems. There's so many options to it, and I love the fact that we're talking about this on our 150th episode, because for 3 years we've come back and forth to this game in some capacity. In the spring of 2018, you guys assigned it to me as a PickZ PlayZ, and I've stuck in 12 hours in it, and really got a neat little story that I built myself out of it, as I got my way to the center of the universe. And then we all kind of jumped back in the summer of 2018 when it launched on Xbox, and Swiss, you picked it up on PC, and then last year it had the next update where they added the third person perspective, and they did a little bit of softening the start, like Agasicles was talking about, and I jumped back into it there with because it had PSVR support, and now you guys are diving back in because it's on Xbox Game Pass. And so it's a game that really this is Hello Games, right? This is the game that they have stuck with, the game that got kind of trounced and dragged through the mud on its launch in terms of what we now would consider an early access game, that they have decided that their commitment to this game is certainly enough to keep them going, and it is something that is really commendable, and it's fun to hear all the different ways that this game fulfills some of those original visions. So,
Do we know if is it crossplay? When they added the multiplayer, but it is crossplay.
Crossplay just came now when it came to they added the multiplayer last summer or last August, because it's an August release, and so they keep doing big. And now this summer they added the crossplay came just about when it was coming out on Game Pass. So yes, it is. Yep. I guess, please. Not only have you been playing No Man's Sky, but you've been playing Star Citizen, a game that, like No Man's Sky, continues to grow. But No Man's Sky is released. Where's Star Citizen at?
Yeah, it's still not released. It's still in alpha. Look, I mean, so before anybody listens to this and walks away with a complete negative, like I just, after a year and a half spent as an investigative reporter, essentially diving into Star Citizen and, determining whether or not it's really the cult that we claim that it was. The reality is the game, much like a Kickstarter, right? The game is for a certain type of person, right? Period. Like, if you are a generic gamer, in particular, if you don't understand how the industry works, you probably shouldn't get into Star Citizen. Because number one, you see a lot of people in the community who draw all these relatively wild conjectures about how much a game costs and how much time it takes development. Things that are drawn, conclusions that are drawn by people who are not software developers, don't understand the software development industry, and just shouldn't. You need to watch about 50 episodes of this podcast, and then maybe you can render in input or but I do get it. I understand, even if you don't know anything about software development, I can understand how you plunk down $40 for a game, thinking of it just as another early access game on Steam, and we're expecting to have something out of it in a year or two. That's not what it is. Now knowing that, you can have all sorts of discussions about whether or not you think it's right or it's wrong. And my feeling would be, if you think that it's wrong, then don't buy it. Don't participate in it. As far as, what the game is. And I mean, so I guess the first thing to cover is, how I've settled into playing it. And the way, look, I spent some money on the game. I spent some money on the game because of the promise of the game and what I hope it eventually becomes. And that's that, right? I did that with an understanding that there was no obligation, or anything due to me, at the end, which again would be the same way that I would say somebody should go into Kickstarter, because you're not guaranteed anything at the end. So, the game, status-wise, the game, I feel like the game is less stable than it was last year when I started playing it. I have taken it out of my regular rotation because of that stability, because it was creating a lot of bad time management habits for me in an attempt to eke out that dream. And so I've defaulted to playing it like I think a lot of people around the community do, which is, I don't, my timer isn't hardwired to the patch, right? There are a lot of Star Citizen players that are like, okay, a new patch is out, let me try and play it. Oh, this doesn't have the stability that I want or that I need. Let me put the game away, and then I'll come back to it when the next patch comes out. I don't do that. I have a periodic timer that says, hey, go back and check the game out. And then, if in the first couple of sessions, I can't progress through the regular mission model stuff, that I've previously played, then I just put the game away. Now, there are some other players who are they find out what the bugs are, and they are, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. And they keep playing it. And I'm like, that's fine for them. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to troubleshoot to figure out the workarounds and then stay away from those parts of the game that aren't stable. I'm just going to, either the game does what it natively is going to do without me having to Google through all of the release notes and everything, or else I'm just not going to do it. What I have discovered, I think more so, and this is a little bit of what I was talking through with Prime, is I think in general, there's a thing that I want or need, and this is kind of principal to the assignment, right, of space and the stars and all that stuff. there's exploration, right? There's the space simulation part of it that I have identified as one of the 4 key components that I need to get out of gaming, as a lifestyle thing overall, right? I need that sense of mechanical enjoyment and feedback, for part of what I get out of games. Not for every game, but throughout the menagerie. But at the end of the day, I think what I want out of participating in a sci-fi setting and in space is I want this amalgamation, this aggregation of things that make space games cool, right? I want like exploration, I want like the fantastical, I want like the story building. And the reality is nothing does that in the way that Star Citizen is trying to do it. I've spent hours and hours and hours and hours playing Star Citizen where that dream is realized, right? Like that fabric, that suspension of disbelief isn't broken. But with the game in the state now where that is not consistent, I think overall what I looked for out of this assignment and kind of where I've been exploring is what are the 4, 5, or 6 games or 3 or 4 games or whatever that in aggregate provide me like that experience. And so Star Citizen to me almost like now for me it's more of a blueprint of like what the possible is, and it's like picking from a shopping list, right? The things that give me that experience overall. I think I still have some things that I need to add into the bucket, right? So there's No Man's Sky now, but I need to add into it like getting back to Elite Dangerous. In a No Man's Sky, I want to get back to the PC version too, because I one limitation with this version was the FOV felt very limited in comparison to what I would hope it is on PC. But I want to add Elite Dangerous to the stable. I think I've hit my point, in playing Star Citizen in conjunction with No Man's Sky this time that I'm willing to take the plunge into EVE Online. And if it's brutal and unfriendly, then I'll just but it's still something that I want to kind of experiment with. But yeah, that was kind of my experience with Star Citizen. It's just not stable. I hit I hit a mission ending bug this time. And again, the thing it put into my philosophical hat is, and The Witcher 3 is guilty of this too. Like my first hour in with The Witcher 3, 2 hours in The Witcher 3 was predominantly characterized by hitting 2 kind of mission ending or mission befuddling bugs, right? Where in the second part, elements of the storyline that you should not have been allowed to encounter unless you had completed other objectives first, were seeable. All right, were presented to the player, and that created this dissimilitude with actually getting through the mission. Right, like you couldn't get through the mission because there were certain event triggers that you hadn't triggered prior to. So that's it's not just Star Citizen, it's other games, but I think one of the things that I hit that I will bounce off of more consistently here is when there is a mission out of sequence or a mission bug that prevents you from completing something and results in you winding up spending a lot of time and Googling and trying to figure that out to get by it.
Nice. Yeah, I think I appreciate the way that you're thinking about what you want out of a space game and where those kind of levers get pulled, where those boxes get checked, what's that satisfaction to you. So I more power to you if you decide to dive into EVE Online. I really want to be on that show to hear about that. So but let's move from something complicated and not so stable in Star Citizen to something that sounds like it actually got a little more stable for Swiss. Minecraft Dungeons. Today you said Mojang has fixed your access problem?
Today is finally the day. This morning I saw a note on their bug report that somebody said, "Oh, thanks Mojang, it's fixed now." And so I tried it out with my son's Microsoft account, who's in my family group, and it was able to go in. We have not played yet because I have a job and we couldn't play on the computers together, but at least now the option is available. And so yeah, probably next episode I'll probably have a report out on Minecraft Dungeons.
So 2 weeks ago on our last GX show, Prime and I had both played it, and Prime decided he was going to keep going with it, where I was a little more, I was definitely a little cooler on it. So, Prime, have you stuck with it?
Yeah, so I've been playing off and on, actually pretty much predominantly with my family or one of my family members. I haven't played it single player for a while since when it first came out, but yeah, I've been playing either with my wife and my son. But this past week, I was playing with my wife again. We were just going through, and we have unlocked like I don't know about 3 or 4 other levels now. So yeah, I mean I'm still enjoying it. I did see online where, at least on the Switch version, if you lock it on 720, it's a little more stable, and it was with just the two of us. I have to see when I get all three of us back on there if it's still like not so stuttery, because it was kind of stuttery when all three of us were playing. Um, so hopefully it still stays like that. So, but yeah, I'm still enjoying it. I still like in the loot. That's a big part of the game, obviously. Dropping the weapons and the armor and different special abilities you can get. So yeah, I'm still sticking with it, and I'll keep playing with my family. So it's nice just to sit down, play with my wife or my kid or something. So, and something different too, especially with my kid, because we usually just play like Fortnite or something, or every once in a while, we haven't played it for a while, but every once in a while we'll play just regular Minecraft game. But it's kind of cool to jump in there with both of them if we have time.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward and approachable game where I could see where it is. It's not only fun to play with your kids, but play with your significant other. It's something that, there's not a, I mean, there is kind of a story, but it's not, you could pick it up and drop it back down at any point in time, and you're not necessarily going to lose the thread to some degree as well. So,
yeah. I haven't hit any other hard bosses yet, so we'll see
the
what happens.
cauldron, yeah.
Cauldron, oh yeah.
Yep. Okay, so Swiss, since you haven't been playing Minecraft Dungeons and haven't been able to until today, you have had a chance to play something else, though.
Yeah. On the Nintendo Switch, last week, Ninjala came out. So I think looks like you and Prime also picked it up. Free-to-play title, where you are child bubblegum ninjas, I guess, and you fight. And it was okay. So I mean, I prefer Splatoon. Let's put it that way. But so initially when you play, I think you have to go up to level 5 before you can really even start to do other modes. You're like locked into one level, and it's third person melee combat. You have an ability to do a little bit of a ranged attack, but it's primarily melee combat. There's a little bit of leveling up your character by fighting these stationary floating robot heads, and you destroy enough of those guys, and you can upgrade your weapon, which is kind of a necessity when you're fighting the other players. It wasn't horrible. Like, I liked the ability to like run up walls and stuff, but like the initial level really has nothing to highlight that aspect of the game. Then I played a little bit of the team match, and there's like a city level, but the city level wasn't entirely captivating. It just felt like some block structures that are like that are supposed to be some skyscrapers with a street running down the middle of them. It didn't seem to take advantage, and the concept, I don't even know. I'm not even sure if the concept's that enthralling. It's melee combat where you fight other people, and it's designed to get you to buy little outfits for your knockoff Splatoon characters that aren't squid people.
See, I'm gonna speak to the positive of it. So if you ask the question first, so I guess please go for it.
Well, just as you're going through your explanation too, explain to me in your explanation how this game is not Brawlhalla.
Brawlhalla. I haven't played Brawlhalla, but it gave me bad. Let me put it this way: it's better than Bleeding Edge. So that's what it reminded me.
I'll agree with that one. Yes.
I would say that it is, to me, I guess it feels more akin to Power Stone, at least in the small confined kind of central map that everybody starts with. once you get out into the city and some of the other places, the map becomes a little broader. So you are running around a little bit more, but that kind of main default map that if you do a quick match in, it's going to spit you into it's pretty much a big square with an outer ring and an inner ring. It's got some verticality, but just enough to maybe help with kind of an escape and to disengage before you come back into or pick another fight. Brawlhalla, if I'm not correct, because I've only played a little bit of it, is closer. It's 2D, right? And I think it feels more akin to in the Smash Brothers or the Rivals of Aether brawl out type of model in terms of.
Yeah, I was sorry, just to interrupt the podcast. So I don't have alerts on, so I think I missed a thing here. So we just got rated by 10 people. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate the love. That's amazing that you guys would raid during a podcast. I certainly appreciate it. I'm gonna go ahead and let my co-host continue on with their agenda, though. But I will try and entreat you guys in the chat. But thanks so much. I did definitely want to verbally acknowledge you guys during the podcast. So.
Great. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thank you very much. So glad that our ramblings at least made sense to a few people. So Swiss, I know you're not. I know you're. Sounds like you're bouncing off of it. So I'm gonna say I found the combat more enjoyable than Splatoon, but to me it's the difference between the melee combat and the shooting, where once I figured out kind of the parry system where you're holding LZ or ZL to kind of blow a bubble and do a parry right as somebody's hitting you, and then figuring out the different directionals that you're going to hit. It's taken me a little while to do that. I have, it's a pretty easy pick up and play. I like the battle royale aspect of it because it's not a real battle royale. Like, you got a respawn timer and you come back in and it's much more about points. And so, there's the points will get you to the point of the ranking after the match, but then you also have kind of the Mario Party style of whoever killed the most drones, kind of the creeps of the map, or whoever killed the most the most other characters get a point bonus as well. And so you kind of jump up and down there. I've had a chance to play the story mode a little bit after I still, the camera in the story mode's not maybe the best. But I think, for $5, maybe the story mode, if you're not enjoying the gameplay of it, the story mode's not going to help you. But I think if you see something in the gameplay, but not necessarily the multiplayer, the story mode's kind of interesting, or at least it's enjoyable. It's kind of vanilla, but that's my take. Prime, you've been playing the story mode as well, right? What's your thoughts on it?
I actually, this is the second game this year that I finished the story mode in. Although this is actually, I shouldn't say I finished it. I finished this chapter because it's in chapters. But yeah, so I went through the whole thing. Probably took me a couple hours, maybe a few hours. But yeah, it basically reminds me of what I played of Splatoon, just kind of like the corridory, we're just gonna have you go this way kind of a thing. Some areas it's a little bit more open, I guess, where you can do a little bit more battle. They basically throw into the city map. So I'm assuming they're just using the maps from the games, probably through the whole story mode, eventually. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I mean, it wasn't. The cutscenes are a little. I don't want to say annoying, but I guess they're a little lacking, just because it's kind of like it's not even really animated. It's just like little pictures that they show you with a little bit of animation maybe here and there, which I guess is fine. I don't want to expect anything, from a smaller studio like this. So, and this one wasn't free. This part wasn't free. It was, like you said, $5. But
yeah, the cutscenes make me feel like if my kids were back in kindergarten or first grade, like this would have been, maybe preschool, that this would have been very much in that kind of it almost feels like a Fisher Price type of character design to some degree.
Yeah, but I could. No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, playing off of that, another odd thing I found. Did you guys, when you first started the game and it kind of went through the like how to play videos, it did this weird thing where it pulled you out of the game and basically connected to a YouTube video through your Switch.
Yeah, like
And
went to a browser almost.
Yeah, it
When it
was
was loading.
nothing. I haven't seen anything like that before, and I didn't even know the Switch kind of did that, but it was really odd.
Yeah, there's a few places that I've read reviews of that call that out. I think US Gamer called it out. A couple other places about how you could definitely tell that this was kind of a budget, or that they didn't. The fact that they're just throwing you into a browser and a pre-rendered video for not only the battle pass but also the tutorial aspect of how to play the game.
I think it'll do that in. I know Rocket League does that too. When you kind of go to their some of the things on the front page where you can kind of go to like one of their news sections and there's a couple other things. It kind of takes you into like a browser type thing. But yeah, I think that's only the second game I've ever seen that do that in. So it was just kind of weird that was actually part of like the game, like the tutorial part. That was just kind of strange. I do get frustrated with this game actually on the multiplayer side, just because I didn't understand the part with the parrying as you were talking about. So it's kind of like a rock paper scissors thing where you got to press one of the direction pads, which I didn't understand that because it actually shows you like I still don't understand why it shows you like right, left, or up or down like just by itself. Like I thought I had to press that way, but I guess that's not the case. Like you have to do the opposite of what the other person's doing. So and I finally found that out later on, just as I was like looking up YouTube videos and stuff like that, and I was just like, what the heck is why am I just losing so badly all of a sudden? I didn't understand that because of that first couple of days I was up there like pretty much in any multiplayer game, you kind of keeping up with people, and then I would just get destroyed. Like I would get like last or second to last place like every time. So I was like, what's going on? And so I haven't jumped back in since I finally figured that out or found that out. So hopefully that helps a little bit more.
Yeah, it really doesn't do a good job of teaching you, right? I think that the fact that you have to go out to kind of find some of those videos, I ended up doing some of the same thing. Once I got that mechanic, it was enjoyable, but it certainly doesn't kind of onboard you into that process.
So I do like the weapon variety too. So you have like the sword or like stick or whatever kind of set of weapons, and then you have like a kind of a range with like yo-yos and kind of stuff like that, and just kind of a heavy weapon, kind of that middle range. So that's kind of nice, and you can play around with those type of weapons too.
Yes, please. What were you gonna say?
So a few rapid fire questions. So free to play.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Relatively new game, launched June 24th, 2020. Right. So yeah. So just in the last week. So
Yes.
Is this a better multiplayer option on the Nintendo Switch? Oh, let me go back. So it's Unreal Engine 4. So does the game run well in comparison to something like Outer Worlds that Prime was talking about?
I've seen it run very well. Even in a 4K TV, the colors are pretty vibrant.
Yeah. So is this a better multiplayer option than Smash Brothers?
No.
No.
Okay. All right.
No, not nearly as deep. No, I think, and I would say to Swiss's point, I don't know that it's a better multiplayer option than Splatoon. I think it is different. I think that Splatoon has a stronger, a bigger. There's a lot more going on in terms of the nuance of the gameplay.
We should specify. We should specify Splatoon 2.
Oh yes, thank you. Splatoon 2. Yes.
I want to say that. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I don't want to sound like I despise the game. Like it was fine for what it is. It's fine for what it is. My kids have enjoyed it. My older kids were playing, and they seem to be having fun with it. My daughter seemed to be getting a lot of first places, so she just seemed to innately grok how to do it. But she's like a Splatoon 2 addict, so it seemed to fit into her wheelhouse, and she liked it. But we talk a lot about having how much bandwidth we have for playing games, and this isn't good enough, I think, to really crack my rotation. But it's not horrible. they did better job than like Amazon did with Crucible.
Yeah.
So,
Ouch, you had to go there. I was
uh,
thinking of this as well. Like,
so-
at least it's still surviving its first week.
so we're definitely going to have a shootout, probably in a new topic as we head towards the end of the year, and definitely the first two contenders in that ring are. Oh well, I guess Anthem's been out for a year, right? So we may have to have a shootout between Anthem and Crucible from a opinion standpoint. So microtransactions.
Optional. It's all cosmetic.
Like, yeah. There's a battle pass too, which there's a free tier, just like pretty much most battle passes. So you can unlock some stuff.
And it's kind of priced in that same $10 mode as other battle passes. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those. I mean, it's pretty accessible. It hits all those kind of free to play battle pass type of low barrier to entry aspects. What were you going to say, Charm?
Did either of you try playing with motion controls? No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, this one seems like really bad to try that with. I mean, Splatoon, okay, I could kind of see it's just like a shooter basically, but this one just seemed like I was like, I'm not even gonna try this because I don't know if it takes over like Splatoon, where you have to use like the motion. You can't like use both. Like Fortnite, you can put motion on, but you can still aim with the sticks, which I always have on. It's kind of nice. But this one just I didn't even try it yet, and I don't know if how that motion works actually. So I was just wondering.
So I was just about to be critical of it and just basically say, because we talk on the show a lot about design and implementations and things you should or shouldn't do or things that work and don't work well. But motion controls in a multiplayer game just shouldn't be done. Like it's hard enough to get 1-to-1 right with the TV set in front of you, much less to translate that across the network to something that has accurate predictive collision detection right against another player. That all being
So
said,
I think motion controls here are only camera. I don't think that
Okay.
it is.
Okay.
It is not swinging.
It's not combat.
It
Okay.
is similar
Yeah.
to Splatoon, where motion controls is your aiming, right?
Okay.
It's your
Yeah.
reticle, which ends up being your camera to some degree.
All right. The one element that I was going to walk back, I mean, even if it had been combat controls, is, however, motion controls may be an easier thing for younger players to remember. So it might be a way to get younger players into multiplayer online fighting games, whereas, those of us who are button mashers, like that's a Crucible that, at least for me, like I'm like, well, that's just filled with money plays and people who find out exploits and things to champion themselves through to higher tiers, which I mean, I don't care about, and I know like some of you guys don't care about either. So I don't know, but it's an interesting implementation though.
It's funny when you said that, because when you asked me if we use the motion controls, the first thought I had was, no, we're too old for that nonsense.
I'll use it sometimes. It depends. So, well, I was gonna say Breath of the Wild had it a little bit, but I don't know if you could. I'm assuming you could turn that off though, right? The motion control.
I think that was for aiming, right? I mean, for
Yeah,
bow and
Yeah, it was
arrow?
for aiming. Yeah,
I didn't
just
think-
for. I think that was just for the bow and arrow, I believe.
Right,
Yeah.
and I don't remember a way to turn that off.
I don't
Okay.
think so.
But
no.
but the way they implemented it was a thing you had to do, but they didn't make it such high frequency that it was just really like disruptive, right?
Yep. So
I'll
let's
use it when
go ahead.
No, I was just saying I'll use it when I can. if I can do both. If it doesn't take over your controls like Splatoon did. Like my son plays it with. I have no idea how he plays Splatoon 2 with motion controls, but he does it, and I'm like, oh wow, he does pretty good too. So it's like, all right, well, it's a young man's game.
So let's speaking of young, let's go ahead and move from the Fisher Price saccharine bubblegum popping ninjas of Ninjala to something a little more grounded in maybe in real life, or at least modeled after things. So I guess please talk us through World of Tanks, World of Warplanes. I know you've been playing. You've played some World of Warplanes before, I think, but World of Tanks feels new.
No, World of Warplanes is actually pretty new. So this has kind of become thematic for me throughout the year. There's definitely been a progression from, Panzer Corps to other war games and real-time strategy games and Unity of Command and now on to the wargaming.net games. And that's kind of the hill that I fell down. Like I spent like a Saturday. Initially I was gonna get into World of Tanks Blitz, which is a mobile game that has also been ported to PC. So again, in this world where because I'm not a good online multiplayer player, I definitely take my shots where I am allowed to play on PC or on Switch with foolish mobile players and just put the schwack attack on other people using a game with higher fidelity controls. So I'll take it. So I played World of Tanks Blitz, and I was left a little dissatisfied, particularly with the graphical fidelity. Right, so I'm playing on a system, with a third generation Ryzen processor with a 1070 GTX. Right, so it's like, am I really going to use this to play this game? So I went ahead, despite a lot of the negative comments, and World of Tanks players don't like the presence of self-powered guns, which is basically artillery in World of Tanks, whereas you don't have that in World of Tanks Blitz. And so what you wind up having in World of Tanks is you wind up having people playing self-powered guns, and so once you're spotted, they can just sit all the way in the back and fire completely onto the other side of the map, and drop a shell on you, and you can't even see them. So at any rate, I fell down this hill of so it went from World of Tanks Blitz to checking out World of Tanks, which forced me to realize that because World of Tanks, let me back up. World of Tanks Blitz is on Steam. World of Tanks is not. It is you can only pull it down through the wargaming.net client. So you guys were in the Discord chat, right? We were talking about this a couple of weeks ago where, great, another client that I have to pull down. But once I pulled down the client, I was like, well, I might as well just grab all of these games that I've been meaning to check out. And so that's how I got into World of Tanks and World of Warplanes. And I'd already been playing World of Warships. So probably the most interesting thing as I've been checking these games out is I did have, a couple people come by while I was live streaming it who were asking questions about like, how do these games compare? And it's a good conversation, right? Because each of the three games is a little different in its presentation and in its progression model. And that should definitely dictate like who plays, what kind of gamer plays which of the games. The key differences, that I found while I've been playing these are, World of Warships is less complex in terms of what it stacks into the UI and what it expects you to understand in terms of a progression model than World of Tanks. So World of Tanks has like 9 different features and functions for each tank spread throughout the bottom of the UI where you need to understand like the difference between consumables and skills. And then you have 4 people in your tank crew and each of them have their own skill set. And that's a progression, right? So it gets fairly complex in determining how to juggle kind of each of these 3 enclaves in terms of, how to make each one progress. And as you go through, and World of Tanks is definitely the most grindy of the 3, I feel like. So, while you can have hundreds of different tank types, the reality is in order to get through the progression model, for a 2 or 3 hour session, you're really just going to sit in 1 or 2 tanks, right? World of War Planes is a little simpler. Not as simple as World of Warships. One of the key differences with World of War Planes is that not a ton of people play it. And so when you go into a match at the tier 1, and all of these have a tier ranking of tier 1 through 10, where there are differences in who plays at what tier, and that plays into your progression model too, right? So the really meaty PvP play for World of War Planes is tier 4 through 6 is what I understand. Whereas in World of Warships, nothing really matters until you're playing at tier 8 through 10. So it's just a slog and a grind to finally get up to that point to where you can play ranked battles and yada, yada, yada. The big thing with World of Warplanes is that while I love the game and I love, joysticks, we just talked about mechanical feedback and enjoyment in games. The problem with World of Warplanes is not a ton of people play it. Actually, from a compute standpoint, the World of Warplanes servers, they basically run in containers on excess capacity on the World of Tanks servers, right? So if a bunch of people load up the World of Tanks servers, you're probably going to get impacted in your performance of World of Warplanes. I've had 2 instances where, one of them I blame partially on the joystick because I could actually see where the joystick was disconnecting, and I think that flight control system was just a little old. I got rid of it. but I put a new flight control system on it, and then after a little while, I started experiencing what I believe was some instability as well. So I need to do some additional testing and then just play with mouse and keyboard, which it turns out a lot of players do. I don't really know how that's satisfying playing a flight sim with mouse and keyboard, but a lot of people do it. But I've definitely read enough literature and online dialogue to see that World of Warplanes is plagued by not a lot of people playing at the tier 1 through 3 level. You really need to rank up till you get to tier 4, and then has some problems with stability. So I've tagged this game as a thing where I need to be conscious and aware of when it's starting to hit things like I've seen again in that kind of Star Citizen paradigm where while I love the game and it, left unchecked, I would dump, dozens and dozens of hours into it. I need to be on guard against, dumping time into a game that doesn't have the sufficient stability to really allow me to get that progression model enjoyment out of it, right? But I've had a ton of fun playing it. I love World of Tanks. I really love World of Warships. I really love both. They both look, all of them look gorgeous. World of Warplanes is really interesting. Like I said, I really love flight sims. But it's all good. And again, I'll compliment all of the wargaming.net games that I do like the monetization model where you can get a battle pass, right, or a season pass, and just get it for they have different price increments where you can just get it for 3 days, right, or just get it for 7 days. So if you're going to play it for 4 days at a time and then drop it and then come back to it in a month, you can get a 3-day premium pass, dump some time into it and then drop it and leave it without spending any more money and then come back to it.
That's really interesting in terms of that model. And I mean, World of Tanks has been around almost a decade now. I mean, it's got a huge worldwide base, so I'm really thinking about that model. At what point, how did they figure out that they had enough traction and traffic that model made economic sense to them in terms of the kind of quick dipping in and out?
Yeah, particularly when they don't run the game on Steam, right? Where they do their own thing. I mean, World of Tanks has been around long enough that it is ahead of where a lot of other games and their developers and publishers are figuring out the free-to-play and monetization model. In a lot of ways, it's matured. In a lot of ways, it's post-Apogee, so it's hit its peak. And it's maintaining players. Like I said, a lot of players have left World of Tanks to go play World of Tanks Blitz because they're not concerned about that graphical fidelity. There's also some a nicety in World of Tanks Blitz where, from a career and a progression standpoint, where you could play that game on PC. We talk about the Switch all the time. You could play that game on PC. You can go on travel. You can just take your iPad and you can still play World of Tanks Blitz, right, and maintain that progression. So it's fairly interesting. It's nice. Remember, this is the company that we talked about at the end of the year show, or at least I brought up at the end of the year show of companies that were kind of doing their own thing. We're part of the Cyprus stock exchange, and then just we're big enough. We don't need to be part of a stock exchange. We'll just get off, and now we don't have to obey any regulatory measures or anything. We can just go do our own thing. So, but the games are interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they maintain them or just go to what their next generation play is, which might be prompted by the new consoles coming out, because there are versions of each of these games, not World of Warplanes, but for World of Tanks and World of Warships, there are versions that are console specific as well.
I knew World of Tanks was on both consoles. I didn't know that Warships was, so that's interesting. Or I should say, at least of both of the Xbox, PlayStation consoles. I have been playing a little bit of something a little more new. It came out on Game Pass, PC, and Xbox, West of Dead. So this is an indie roguelike kind of Western hellscape aspect that you are stuck in purgatory, more or less, but it ends up being in kind of the Old West. Ron Perlman is the narrator, or at least he's the voice of the main character. He's not really a narrator in a Bastion type of way where it kind of walks you through that. He's more the voice of the main character, who's almost has a Ghost Rider head to it. But for the most part, it's a rogue, but it is a dual stick shooter. To some degree, you get a little bit of cover mechanics, but your dual stick is using weapons of the Old West. So you maybe got some dynamite to throw, but you've got weapons that need to be reloaded, reloads automatically. So it's not kind of a fast dual stick shooter where you're kind of continue. There's that frenetic pace. There's some of it, but it's also a little more strategic because of the slowness of the weapons. I should say, at least at this point. I'm only, played for an hour and a half or so, died plenty of times. One of the things on the control aspect that I'm struggling with is in some other dual stick shooters, you get a little bit more of a, I don't know, almost like a, where your aim line is going to be, that it stretches out like a laser sight. Where in this game, because, and it, obviously in an old West gun, there's not a laser sight, so it doesn't really fit that within the aesthetic. But you get just a small little an arrow coming out from your body, and I find myself looking at the enemy that I'm trying to shoot, not my character, in terms of getting that aim. So my aim is not great, which means I die in a roguelike quite a bit. But it is, it is well done. I really appreciate the music and the aesthetic. It does have this kind of heavy black line, cell shaded kind of comic book noir aspect to it. I don't know. I mean, I think I'll stick with it a little bit more just to kind of see if it gets a little more variety. I'm going to play it on PC and see if that helps with my aiming. If I'm up a little closer to the screen, if I'm able to kind of see both of those together, and maybe I'll get a maybe my mouse and keyboard aspect there might help it a little bit as well. So that is on Game Pass, both PC and Xbox. So that's a new game. But to wrap us up here in our gameplay segment and almost wrap us up into the end of the show, Prime and Agascles, you guys have both gone back to not so new games here for the last two. Agascles, why don't you, we'll let you wrap us out. And so Prime, go ahead and tell us about what you've been playing your last game here.
Yeah, so on the Switch, they have Asphalt 9 Legends. And I guess it's been out for a little bit now. I don't know if it's been out for on the Switch all that long, but the Asphalt series, I think, was kind of came from the mobile side of gaming. I don't even remember what I was looking for at some point on the eShop, and I saw that. I was like, oh, it's free, so I'll check it out. And it's cool, just a fun little like casual kind of racing game. They do actually have real world cars in there, so you got like Aston Martin and Ferraris and souped up Nissans and all these other kind of racing cars. But the gameplay is more like a San Francisco Rush kind of game where you're just kind of going down these tracks and bump into each other. You can actually do like a little spin move and knock cars out of the way. And there's like a what's that racing game now? Burnout kind of slow-mo, like it's like crumpling and crashing out into the screen and stuff like that. So it's just kind of quick and fun. I'll play like maybe 2 or 3 races, and just kind of bounce off, play something else. But it's just kind of a cool little racing game. And I'm not into the sim racing, so this was like perfect for me, that I can just go in there, play a few matches or play a few races, and I'm done for that session at least. There are like daily races and like I think weekly and maybe even monthly, or actually there's weekly and then like special events where you can get like a souped up car or whatever. So, and you can spend in-game money for the different cars and stuff, or obviously you can spend real money, and then it gives you obviously more in-game money to buy up a better car. But I've just been playing casually, so I'll never spend any money on this one. Just race every once in a while and do the dailies, and that seems to give you a good amount of money. So it's just a fun little racer that I picked up.
Yeah, just to pile onto it. So the Asphalt series has been around since really the iPad, the first iPad came out. It's really like the premier, in my opinion, one of the premier racing games. Real Racing is up there too, but Real Racing has some goofy monetization, like time limiting aspects to it. To me, it's number one. It's a game loft game. There have been 9 iterations. There's actually been more than 9 when you include like subtitles of different numbered versions, but to me, it's like the Need for Speed of mobile, and it probably cuts a closer to the cloth of Need for Speed Most Wanted, which I am not a super big fan of. But I will say, I would rather play Asphalt than Need for Speed Most Wanted. But it's really impressive. It's also controller. I mean, if you play it on mobile, it's controller enabled, so it works. If you use your Xbox or PlayStation controller. I've played plenty of it on NVIDIA, and it's nice for it to be on the Switch, which is a system that is ripe for having a really good racer, but doesn't really have one, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty game too. The cars look great. The cars look really nice. And actually, you can use the touch screen for this, which probably comes from the mobile side, but it's actually kind of functions a little bit better. It's a little bit faster just to do the touch screen than trying to use the stick to kind of go over to a selection. And there's even some things that I don't even know if you can actually even do without using the touch screen, but at least not that I found yet. So it's actually kind of nice to have those touch controls on there.
So, as a game series that came out around the time of the original iPad, Gasicles, the game that you have for your last one here also came out around the time of the original iPad. So, how did you end up going all the way back to the original Uncharted?
Yeah, and I'll try and I know we're heading for endgame here, so we need to get out of here. So I should probably arguably have titled or subtitled that entry a little different. Specifically, I'm playing the is it the Drake Collection?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm playing the remasters, right, which came out of which were on PlayStation Plus last year.
Yes, it
Ish.
was. Yes, last fall it was one of the PlayStation Plus games.
Okay, so yeah, so I pulled it down. Part of this is wrapped around again, I'm on the journey, so I looked at as the quarantine lockdown time started, was about the time that I started conceptualizing about getting rid of my consoles and playing PC only. So all the consoles were packed up in a box. Underneath one of the PC desks. I have recently decided, in our conversations, and as Xbox and PlayStation have both done their events with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, that I'm gonna stick around on consoles, and we're gonna. I mean, look, there are only so many AAA releases, per year. When you say that you're just going to play one platform, that means there's even fewer AAA releases per year that you can play. That number increases when you're playing across all the consoles as well. So I'm going to stick with consoles. There's a time management thing of how I'm going to do that. One of those is that I'm not going to have all of them out and connected at one time. So recently, in the last couple of weeks, I took my PlayStation 4 base back out, and my Xbox One X, which is how I played No Man's Sky. I hooked up the PlayStation 4 also, so those are the only two consoles hooked up right now. And what I've been playing on the PlayStation 4, in addition to other stuff, I'm gonna play a little God of War tonight. But I've been playing Uncharted: Drake's Fortune out of that remastered, the remasters out of that Drake's collection from last year. So. There's not a lot to say about it other than that it's a wonderful series. Looks good, looks solid on a 4K TV with the remastering in place. It's wonderful to kind of go back to that time. And I was a person who didn't play Uncharted when it was initially released. I came back to it, some number of years later, when it was made. I want to say this game was released twice on PlayStation 4. Once when they just made the PlayStation 3 version available, or maybe I had the disc. I'm not sure which. So, but I've started playing it once before. Maybe I had a physical copy from PlayStation 3 or bought it used or something. And now I'm playing it again for the second time through the remaster. So,
nice. So I'll say, for a point of clarification, that while we have had the Sony event, we have not had the Microsoft event, which is coming up in another week or two in July here. So.
Well, we haven't had the second Microsoft event that is going to focus on their first party.
First party, right? Yes, right. Yes, very much so. Exactly. So lots of good games, lots of stuff more that we could talk about, certainly, gentlemen. But we are almost at our 90-minute mark here. So just as we hit our assignment at the beginning of the episode, we got another assignment to take us out here. This is the July 4th weekend here in the United States. So as we're heading into that Independence Day weekend, whether you celebrate by watching Will Smith kick an alien in the head, or if you have your own celebrations, but we are going to turn our focus here in our assignment into kind of the conflicts, whether they're political or military, that have been reflected, the idea of throughout throughout our country. Obviously, there is plenty of conflict going on at this point. This is not to make light or kind of gloss over some of the cultural and political conflicts and social issues that are still going on and are essential for us to keep talking about. But here we are going to focus in on going back and kind of turning our focus on a variety of genres, but looking at the kind of war aspect that and how it's highlighted, how it's portrayed through a variety of games. We spent some time tonight talking about World of Tanks, World of Warplanes, which is on Agasicles' pick for his assignment. But so regardless of the genre, that we are going to look at some type of military-based, also kind of realistic-based in terms of looking back at a battle, at a conflict within the United States or the world for our assignment. Gentlemen, 150. Thank you very much. Any final closing thoughts, any parting words, any other information from the chat that you want to pull in for us, Agasicles?
No, it's been warm and friendly in chat. I really appreciate the rating party that came through. It's really amazing. It's the first time anybody's rated during the podcast, so it radically took me off guard. Like I said, I didn't have alerts enabled because we usually don't have them interrupting the podcast. But I'm glad that I caught it before all you guys rolled out. And I appreciate those of you who were able to stay around as well. I know everybody wasn't able to stay around or isn't able to stick around after a raid. Completely understand that because I've been in that boat before too. But really appreciate you guys swinging through, and hopefully you guys will come back and check out the podcast at some point. More often than not, it is we're here on Thursday nights at sometimes starting between roughly 8:30 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern, and we go for about an hour to an hour and a half. So feel free to come by whenever you guys would like.
All right. Well, that is a good outro. I mean, yes, here on Enough to Keep Going, we'll be back every week around that same window of time. Next week is our deep dive episode. We're going to be diving into the news cycle. There's still a lot of things trickling out in the summer of games. Osiris Prime, you're going to be hosting us. And Swiss, you are back in the co-host seat. So, gentlemen, always looking forward to your analysis of the news from the last week or two. Gentlemen, thank you all. Thank you for those joining us. Thank you for everybody that has stopped in or viewed or posted or downloaded us over the last 150 episodes. We've bounced around from platforms and had a couple strikes against us in YouTube at one point in time, but we have moved our way around for 150 episodes. So I appreciate you all, and I'm thankful to be able to continue these conversations and to enjoy our hobby together. So, for myself, DBQ Hams, Agasicles Stamus, Osiris Prime, and Swisscar, this is the Enough to Keep Going podcast on the E2KG network. Play the games you love those you play with, and come back again. We'll be here for another 150 more. Good night. Thank you.